Regards from safely and peaceful Kyiv at the moment, guys. This is already a couple of months into the war in Ukraine, and currently many residents of our city are back. However, the war is still happening, and I was fortunate enough to meet in Kyiv this man. If you followed events in Ukraine, you probably know Operator Starsky.
Good day everyone, Operator Starsky.
So as I understand, you were like closely following everything from the first days of the war. You were participating, and you actually have one of the largest channels in English language that is doing the reports about the war. So first of all, guys, subscribe, and now let's carry on and speak who is Operator Starsky really.
I'm a Ukrainian National Guardsman, and I work as a press officer for the Rapid Response Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine.
So, like, what's your background like? Because, like, when did you start serving in the Ukrainian army, and like, how are you related to the combat in general?
I started my service in 2014, in the end of 2014. Before that, I was a completely civilian person, but my father was a military, and father of my father was also a military, and same story with his father. So it's like a dynasty, basically. And when shit hit the fan in 2014, I decided that I gotta participate, obviously, and I proudly served my country since 2014.
Since the early stages of the war, you became, if possible to tell, like the face of events in Ukraine, because your channel is one of the largest that is like telling about the events local here. And what's unique, guys, about the channel of Operator Starsky is that you are not a foreign expert, you are the real guy serving Ukrainian army, being here in the field. Can you tell, like, how did it all start? Like, how did you move from being a soldier, yes, and you grew into this like media personality?
So I enlisted as a police operator, basically, in 2014. It was a voluntary special force police battalion. And in 2015, I passed this selection program to my current brigade that was made according to NATO standards and things like that. And I got enlisted as a soldier. Then I was offered to become a sergeant and NCO, and I passed my NCO school in Zolochiv. And then I was an NCO for my brigade for like 3 years, basically. I had 5 deployments to the front lines before this invasion. And yeah, and then my command discovered that I have a huge background in communications, so they made me an offer I couldn't refuse to become a press officer of Rapid Response Brigade.
What about the channel itself? Because as I understand, this is your biggest platform, how you communicate with the international community, and this is a great asset also not only for you, but for your brigade and for your unit and for Ukraine in general. So what's the story behind that?
This channel is both my biggest success and my biggest tragedy. Because, you know, the war is not the reason for becoming popular, and I would trade my kidney just to remain an unknown gaming YouTuber with 2 subscribers, my mom and my dog. But we have what we have, and currently there's war in Ukraine, and I decided to use my knowledge and skills to inform people about what happens here. And on the first place, I want to debunk Russian fakes, because the biggest weapon of Russia is not their tanks or their missiles, not even their nuclear weapons, it's their propaganda that was invented and developed and modernized, and basically hybrid warfare as we know it today comes from Russian propaganda, originates from Russian lies. And one of my biggest goals is to teach people how to do fact-checking, how to understand what's true, what is not true, how to confirm facts, and basically how to keep their informational hygiene in a good shape.
Let's move a bit closer to the events on the field itself. So as we spoke behind the scenes, you were actively participating from the first day of war here on the outskirts of Kyiv. Basically, you told me you served in the combat during the attempt to take over Hostomel. Can you tell us a little bit more about those events?
Yeah, so basically all Russian paratroopers died. Yeah, long story short. So yeah, basically on the 9th, on the night from 23rd to 24th, I knew that something's gonna happen, so I already had my bags prepared and stuff, and I was already on my way to my base when I received the alarm call. And yeah, Russians arrived on their helicopters probably around 10, maybe 11 a.m. in the morning, and we had some party around our base and around the airport, because majority of my brigade was already deployed on the east in the area of Trehizbenka and Severodonetsk, and the airport and the base were only guarded by a small company tactical group that consisted mostly of conscripts. But the fact is that those conscripts are trained as good as we train our contract soldiers, because 20% of our conscripts usually sign contract, so that they don't have to pass through the same training program. They are prepared specialists already, and they knew how to operate their anti-aircraft missiles. They knew how to operate anti-aircraft guns, Zu-23 too, and they were able to destroy 6 helicopters, and they damaged a bunch more. The only problem was that there were too many helicopters. So according to information that I have now, around 100 Russian helicopters were involved into this raid. At first I thought that there were like 35, maybe 40 helicopters, because it was according to information from our observers. But my commander spoke to different generals, and he said that that morning 140 Russian helicopters crossed the border of Belarus and Ukraine, and 100 helicopters were involved into attack on Hostomel, mainly attack helicopters like A-52, Mi-24, and they were covered by Su-24 and Su-25 Russian attack aircraft.
So basically the battle for Hostomel was one of the decisive one in the early stages of the war, guys, and this actually prevented the Russian army of advancing into Kyiv. Obviously there was a big price being paid, so if the Battle of Hostomel was a party, can we tell that the surrounding picture is a hangover from this party?
I would say so, because here we can see a lot of vehicles. A lot of those vehicles basically come from Hostomel. So behind my back you can see that rusty, demilitarized Russian
Let's
tank.
take a look closer, yeah?
Yeah, so this one was taken from the Hostomel airport. It was obviously destroyed by an artillery strike. And for example, this is Russian BMD, the vehicle used by Russian paratroopers a lot, as well as those remains. What's interesting about this turret, it belongs to BMD-4. It has a very distinctive 30mm cannon attached to its main cannon. And interesting fact about those infrared visors is that the electronics for those visors were bought in Europe. So they originate from countries like France, for example. And a lot of their turrets are equipped with European electronics.
guys, if you want to take a look closer on the fresh events that were happening on the surroundings of Kiev and how the battle of entire northern Ukraine was won by Ukrainian armed forces, I highly recommend you to check out some videos from that time that Operator Starsky has on his YouTube channel, and definitely it will make much more sense to you once you have a closer look. Also, to develop the topic later on, like tomorrow, we are going to travel to the outskirts of Kiev to see how are the villages that have been destroyed are recovering from those terrible events month after the occupation. And in the meantime, I'm going to pass the conversation to my friend Hrvoje. Hello.
Hi.
Hrvoje is a Croatian political scientist. Together we've been traveling around Ukraine, and in the previous videos we are showing you Kharkiv, Donbas, humanitarian mission that we delivered into the central Ukraine. But I'm sure you want to ask very specific questions from your professional side, and I'll leave the discussion, guys, to you.
So we have a pleasure here to have our friend, the press officer from the Ukrainian army, and he told us previously about the Battle of Hostomel. I was wondering, as a young person, you are, and I'm a professor, and you're a soldier. I'm wondering, how did you choose your career? Like, what were you doing before the war?
Before the war, I was purely a communications person. I worked in different international organizations. I worked for international projects of USAID and the World Bank Group and stuff like that. So I have a huge experience in communications internationally. But of course, as soon as this war started, and the war started right after our Revolution of Dignity, in which I participated as well, of course, as a citizen of my country.
Can you tell us something about that? This is connected to Maidan, right?
Yeah, sure.
2014.
2014, right?
Yeah, it started in November 2013, and
how old were you? If this is okay.
I'm 37.
Okay, because I was wondering, because there are some young people that recently died in war, popular people who died, you know, and they were participating with having 16 years in the Maidan revolution. So, sorry, continue, please.
Yeah, we have a lot of people of different ages that sacrificed their lives, actually. Yeah, I was responsible for security of Ukrainian revolutionary Kiev Hall, Kiev Town Hall, basically, when this all started. But unfortunately, by the end of the revolution, I had to go to Poland and treat my wounds, basically.
Okay.
I received a bunch of minor traumas during the revolution. And
this was becoming something like a changing, turning point into what you were doing right now, right?
Not really.
No?
My friend was captured as POW near Ilovaisk in 2014.
Okay.
And I decided that I should really return and help him out, because he had wife and kids and stuff like that. So I decided that I gotta return, I gotta enlist, and I gotta fight for my country until this war is finished.
So now you are, as we already have the chance to hear, you are a specialist in so-called new media, right? And you serve well as a press officer in this new media. Now I'm kind of interesting, because this is the part of my background, the political science and media. Our department is specialized in political science and media. How what do you think, how the people like you can contribute to this war? You mentioned something about debunking. This is very interesting for me, because I was also participating in one of the projects about debunking of information, and I think that the people are not aware around Europe, not just in Ukraine, how this Russian propaganda works. So can you tell us a little bit more? I know that you already spoke about that, but can you tell us a little bit more how it works, how this fact-checking actually works?
So basically they lie. They give like 10% of true information that you can confirm, and the rest is whatever bullshit they can pack into this message. In order to understand the origins of Russian propaganda, you gotta learn more about so-called Russian world, which is their official ideology.
Российский мир.
Yeah, Русский мир is their official ideology in Russia, according to which Russia is quote-unquote the God's chosen country with people with deep open souls, full of cosmic features and stuff like that. They have the strongest army, wealthiest land, and like they are the best. Of course, they are not Nazi. Of course, I mean, even despite the fact that they position themselves as like uber people, uber human, of course they are Nazi. Yeah, and you have to dig more into this Russian world because it's a very interesting ideology, basically. So they believe that they have to return all of the post-Soviet countries back into this new empire, and they believe that their country has no borders because they talk a lot about returning back Alaska.
But there's also one additional thing that so-called this idea of Euro-Asianism, and and the part of this idea is sort of some sort of pan-Slavic, ideas that are actually very popular in some of the Eastern European countries. Do you know something about that? Like how it works in other countries? This type of propaganda that the people are like now saying, okay, the Americans are basically the same like Russians. They want to make the things equal. But can you tell us something more about this?
Yeah, sure. So basically, this ideology is packed with Nazi stuff. So they have names for each nation in the world.
Oh.
They call Ukrainians Hohols, Polish are Czechs, everybody from Caucasus regions are like Banabaki and stuff like that. So they have specific name, like abusive name for every nation, and they widely use it, of course. What's interesting about this pan-Slavic ideology is that it's conflicting with itself, because again Russia consists of different nations that were enslaved by Russian Empire years ago, and for example one of the foundations of their Русский мир ideology is their most proper religion, which is Russian Orthodox Church. And interesting fact is that 50% of Moscow's population are Muslims. They are not even Orthodox, and there are different people of different religions and nations there, but they still pump and push that idea of pan-Slavism, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And of course, it's also based on things like inventions and achievements of Kievan Rus, of course, which was a Slavic country back then, but the only problem was that it was a Ukrainian kingdom.
Problem for them.
Yeah, I know exactly that they even attempted to rewrite Wikipedia. They tried to remove all the words dedicated to Kiev from Kievan Rus, so it was called Ancient Rus, and I think this article is still there in Russian Wikipedia. There's a lot of things that just don't combine, but they still somehow try to do that.
I mean, I asked you that question on purpose because in our part of the world, in the Balkans and the region, we have this sort of ideology that is kind of like a copied ideology. It is called Srpski mir, like the Serbian world, and it's something that also makes the whole area unstable in a way. So the last question, actually, what I realized while I was here traveling together with my colleague, it's something from your side, from the Ukrainian side. I saw almost in every village, in every town, a lot of posters, a lot of support. So can you tell us how this, this support works? This kind of positive messages. What are the content of these positive messages?
It works both for our soldiers as well as our civilians, but interesting thing about Ukrainians is that there's really not a big difference between our army and our civilians. We are the same, actually. Without our army, our civilians would not exist. Without our civilians, without our nation's support, our army would never exist. That's why we are the same, basically, and that's why whenever Russians try to explain their atrocities that they committed with lies about like Ukrainian soldiers shooting their own people, it's such a bullshit that we don't even want to comment on that. But yeah, we have a lot of posters around Ukraine, supportive posters. We have like a lot of media materials like videos and stuff, because we understand that we should support each other. We have millions of internal refugees at this point, people who lost their homes, who had to move out and move to different regions of Ukraine, and local Ukrainians show full support and trying to help them as much as they can. And we can see the same on another level when Ukrainian families, kids and women move out to other countries, and they are cared by other people like Polish people, Estonians.
Yeah, we also have in Croatia a lot of Ukrainians.
And I must say that this is very important, of course, because we should show this support. I can say that in Ukraine we can see some kind of new phenomenon of friendship. So we became this, center,
closer.
Yeah, this center for uniting the whole world in its fight against the same problem, which is Russian aggression.
And actually we experienced that during our trip, because we found humanitarians from the UK, from Sweden, and basically in this synergy we all work better to help Ukraine. The last question for you is just a question about probably Ukrainian youth and for other young people, like really enjoying this new media, YouTubers, how they can help, like you. What would your advice is? What they can do for Ukraine, or to debunk, these Russian propaganda?
I would say that first of all, they should care. They should always check facts. They should always read and find new facts about this world, about this war, and check it. Of course, Russia has this factory of creating those fakes, and this factory works 24/7. They're spreading a lot of fakes that can be checked on stopfake.org. informnapalm.org and organizations like that. I know that Bellingcat always debunks Russian fakes as well. I think that common people can support Ukraine in many different ways, from talking to their politicians about increasing support of Ukraine, I mean like military support, to even posting supportive commentaries for Ukrainians, because any kind of support, any kind of aid is important for Ukrainians, and even those supportive commentaries count. So a couple of days ago I asked people to send me all of their photos and videos dedicated to support of Ukraine. So whenever they have like a Ukrainian flag on their street or some kind of event, they would send me this video or picture. At this point I have just more than half thousand of emails that I still have to process, and this is very important because I want to share this with Ukrainians as well as international community. I want to show that we are united like never before, and history didn't know such events, such periods like this one that is ongoing here in Ukraine. So there's many ways that young people, young YouTubers can support Ukraine. For example, I'm a big fan of aviation and avia simulation, and there's a lot of developers of add-ons for different simulators like Milviz, for example. They have their logo made in Ukrainian colors on their site. Like small things, they form a big picture, and this is very good for our morale and our faith. So yeah.
To sum up, guys, the war in Ukraine is the unprecedented historical event in our modern history when the entire world is united against one enemy and behind one single country. Never ever before it was more evident where is evil and where is light. That's why Ukraine is receiving so much support internally from its own population as well as from the entire international community. So in addition, as a blogger myself personally, who is doing war correspondence, and together with Operator Starsky, who is actually the press officer, I think I'm welcoming you to Ukraine. There are areas that you can visit absolutely safely. Just for you to know that you can arrive, you can take a look on these hangovers from the battlefields. You can visit the destroyed villages. You can speak to people who really suffered, and on one side understand for yourself what's going here much deeper. You will create a beautiful, insightful and valuable content for your audience, and also you will participate in this fight for good causes in the entire country. So we are looking forward to see you in Ukraine. All the links to our guest and another friend and myself will be provided down below, including the links you mentioned. So stay with Ukraine, pray for Ukraine, and let's carry on with this combat for good. Stay safe, guys, and all the best.
Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!